Hello and welcome everyone to the information session on clinical development strategies beyond clinical trials. This is Harvard Medical School Executive Education course, and we're going to talk about this with Dr. Stanley Shaw. In a second, I'll give him a floor. So welcome everyone, and just waiting for a second until you all get in. Because contrary to popular belief, Zoom security is not so bad. We're carding everybody at the door, making sure you're at the right place, which is Harvard's Medical School Executive Education course on clinical development strategies beyond clinical trials. So very soon we'll start talking about this with Dr. Stanley Shaw, an MD and PhD as well. So Stanley, perhaps say hello.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you, and thanks, Rudy, for all your help.
Thank you so much, and we'll hear from Stanley very soon about what this course is about, because obviously you are here because you want to find out whether you should take it or not, and we hope you will, but more importantly, that you will get all your questions answered. So please use that infamous Q&A button and submit your questions through Q&A whenever you feel like there is something to be clarified, and we will clarify it as soon as we can. We will also budget some time towards the end for Q&A discussion, of course, but you can, of course, put questions in the Q&A whenever you feel like as well. So this is what we're going to cover. We're going to give you a bit of an introduction about Harvard Medical School. Perhaps everyone on the planet heard of Harvard University, but what about Harvard Medical School? We'll talk about it a little bit more, and also especially the industry that's in focus here, which is life sciences industry. And then we'll talk about program. How will that look like from day-to-day perspective for you if you take this course? And especially, we will hear from Stanley about the curriculum, the program features as well, and also about the other colleagues from faculty that contributed to this program and guest speakers as well. And of course, at the end, we'll come back to the realities of life, which is the application process, registration, and the fees, and how this mechanics works as well. So if you have any questions, you can put that in the chat whenever you like. Or, sorry, I meant Q&A, of course. So let's talk about Harvard Medical School. You probably know that it was founded a long time ago, in particular in 1782. And it goes without saying that school's faculty members have made great contributions to advancing human health around the planet through their roles as physicians, mentors, and scholars or educators. The school pioneered educational models and developed new curricula to meet changing needs of the healthcare sector. This is what we're going to focus now when we talk about clinical trials as well. It cultivated thousands of leaders and caregivers and influenced the science around medicine. And also, we'll talk about this when we focus on corporate education or corporate learning offering of the school. It also helps you to apply the business knowledge or business impacts, or think about business impacts in the healthcare sector, because this is very specific. So what you obviously need is people who understand medicine, people who understand healthcare, but also people who understand strategy and business as well. And this is what you get with Harvard's Medical School corporate learning programs. It supports learners at all levels. We talk about open enrollment programs. So just like in this one, there are no prerequisites. Anyone can apply and take this program. It is an online program, but it's not just a collection of videos. So I'll talk to you about this in a second, because what you will be able to experience is live sessions and pre-recorded lessons at your own pace. So both things, asynchronous and live sessions. However, before we get there, first of all, let's spend a minute or two on why are we here. And this is the snapshot of the life sciences industry. These are just key reasons why are we here. You see the big number here on my right, which is 80%. 80% of clinical trials fail to meet the initial patient enrollment target and the timeline. So they fail their objectives, right? The clinical trials in life sciences on pharma sectors are here so that companies developing drugs can actually develop them and deliver them to the patients that they try to do, that they target. But as we say here, 80% of them fail to do so. On top of that, more than half of those clinical trials are more complex than they were, say, 3 years ago. So the complexity increases and the failure rate is incredibly high. So how can you manage this better, right? This is why we are here. This is what we will learn from Stanley and his colleagues in a moment as well, as an overview first. So it's a 14-week program, multi-modular. What does that mean? We will release content on a weekly basis. So it's 14 weeks. It's not a sprint. I would rather say it's more of a marathon. So you need to pace yourself and make sure that you have enough time for this, even though we think that on a weekly basis, it shouldn't take you more than 3 to 5 hours of commitment. It is focusing on the challenges in life sciences industry, especially in the development of drugs and especially in clinical development or clinical trials projects. And we'll talk about strategic implications of those challenges. We'll talk about feasibility, integration challenges, and potential solutions. Technology could be an answer here. We'll talk about it, whether yes or no. And of course, because we talk about strategic considerations, it's not only about short-term goals and objectives, but it's actually about long-term plans, long-term organizational needs as well. I already mentioned this a little bit. How will that look like in day-to-day for you? It's a self-paced learning. For the most part, you can choose whenever you will consume the content. So we will do it on a weekly basis so that everybody's on the same page. You progress with your classmates, but you can, of course, participate in live sessions, which are incredibly valuable. They will be recorded in case you miss it, so you can watch the recording. But of course, you're encouraged to attend live and interact with your peers as well. It's a robust curriculum that is obviously based on research as well. And you will hear from faculty that it's neutral. But you will also hear from industry experts and guest speakers. But you will get a balanced view here, right? Because nobody's trying to sell you anything. Rather than they will try to give you solutions and tools so you can get better at managing clinical trials. So a bit of an overview before I hand over to Stanley, where we hear in more detail about curriculum. We'll talk about trends in life sciences industry in this course. We'll talk about how clinical trials are changing and evolving, right? I already mentioned that more than half of those are more complex than they used to be 3 years ago. And at the same time, no surprise, 80% of them fail to meet their objectives. So a lot of people talk about digital transformation across various industries, and healthcare may be a challenging one to apply to. However, there are ways to do it, and there are ways to do it smartly and efficiently. We'll talk about those digital solutions and healthcare sector. And at the same time, sometimes the technology is still the easiest part of the puzzle, and the people are the most challenging. So we'll talk about strategies and frameworks, how to actually get your projects and initiatives in a success mode and get going. And all of these frameworks and initiatives are actually very hands-on and very practical. So I think I spoke enough as a warm-up, and now we can hear from Stanley, and he can give us a bit of an overview about what these modules are about. So we're talking about 14 modules, 14 weeks, step by step. What are they about, Stanley?
Thanks, Rudy. Thanks for that wonderful introduction to the program. Maybe I could just offer a couple of overarching comments before I go into the individual modules. As was implied by the last couple of slides Rudy showed you, this is not meant to be drug development 101. This is not going to be kind of a dry encyclopedic recitation of the steps and the basics of how drugs are developed. Instead, what we're trying to do is present insights into key trends in the life sciences industry, important enabling technologies that are increasingly being used by biotech and pharmaceutical companies in their work. And these changes in the external landscape are shaping the strategy of biotech and pharmaceutical companies across the industry. And so it's these trends, changes in the external landscape, and the implications on strategy and operations and workflows for biopharma companies. That's really a lot of the key insights we're trying to present. At the same time, there's a focus certainly on application to clinical development. But as you are preparing to rise in your career and take on positions of increasing responsibility, increasing visibility, and accountability for cross-functional work, we want to portray a better sense, a holistic sense of how clinical development fits in to the ultimate work of your companies, of the life sciences industry, to, yes, develop, but also deliver innovative new therapies to patients. And that means an understanding of steps and processes beyond regulatory approval, involving traditionally parts of the company that might sit in medical affairs or commercial market access. So we want to put clinical development in the broader context. And then finally, the third piece is to develop yourself as leaders. As you assume greater responsibility, you're going to incorporate this technical expertise that you're accumulating every day, every year, into a broader set of responsibilities, right? You have to be aware of things like how to align the work processes, the culture, the human skills, your own skills, and align it with the strategy and therefore the metrics of success for your company or your function. And so as we talk about these individual topics, we are going to also ask you to think about how you might apply these in your work and in your development as a clinical development leader and as a leader for roles beyond that. So with that preamble, let's talk about some individual modules. The first three modules you see on the left are really kind of overviews. In the first module, changes in the pharmaceutical landscape, it really talks about things like the explosion in therapeutic modalities, the great opportunity that novel therapeutic modalities are creating, trends, the increasing viability and even success of development focused on smaller indications, rare disease or oncology, and some of these general trends. The second module is going to talk about digital. It's the first of three different modules that will talk about digital tools. And again, this is a broader overview. We're going to talk about what does digitization mean, converting processes from the analog world into digital form. Think of making a PDF of a written document as a trivial example. And we'll contrast digitization with actual digital transformation, which is something broader, creating new value propositions across the life cycle of a drug. And we'll also talk about how the rise of digital in other industries and in our daily lives is shaping consumer expectations, how companies interact with your customers, your patients, and how and where they receive care. These have been transformed by your patients' experiences in sectors like banking, retail, travel, and you have to understand this broader context to deliver your digital innovation. And then in the third overview module, we're going to talk about access, bias, healthcare disparities, diversity, and what that means both for clinical trials, but also so that any approved therapies can be accessible to all the patients around the world, trying to break down barriers so that all patients around the world have the greatest chance for a healthy, productive life. Moving on, starting in Module 4, we're going to get a little more topical. And so in Module 4, we'll be talking about patients as partners, patient centricity, trying to acknowledge certainly the role that patients can serve for us as inspirations, as cultural touch points for our company and our work. But beyond that, to practical considerations. How can you systematically apply a patient-centric mindset, again, to create value across the life cycle, to run your clinical trials faster, to have better recruitment, better retention and engagement, but also to think about patient centricity and what that means for the evidence that you prepare in clinical development for doctors, for payers, for HTA processes, et cetera. In Module 5, we're going to talk about the perspectives and challenges being faced by sites and site investigators. Part of this is we think that it will help you become a better partner, make your trials more irresistible to these sites if you understand their concerns and the challenges they face. But also, this is a preface to a broader exploration throughout the program of setting up two-way exchange, connections, information flow between, for instance, clinical development and medical affairs or commercial functions. Often, for instance, a site investigator has an early look into adverse events, how they can be managed, how a new therapy might fit into clinical practice. These are important insights for ensuring broad and rapid adoption of a therapy after it achieves regulatory approval. So again, this module is really about expanding your view of sites and site investigators beyond their critical role in clinical trials to the important work that has to happen in the marketplace. Module 6 is one version or one of our modules on digital. This reflects the reality that even if you or your company is motivated to incorporate a digital tool, it's often hard to get started. And so we're going to talk in this module about broader strategic considerations. Should you buy versus build? Should you partner? Should you consider a white label solution? Should you, how should you think about the business or the finances of this? Who might pay for this? And how can you integrate a digital offering with a therapy to improve engagement or adherence, or again, create value across the life cycle? Could I have the next slide, please? We'll continue to talk a little bit more practically about digital offerings. We'll consider the special case of prescription digital therapeutics. This is a very exciting area. Efforts in behavior modification, behavioral health, but also mental health, psychiatric disease, and beyond. And we'll use digital therapeutics as a paradigm to examine general questions relevant for digital, such as regulatory considerations, how to evaluate engagement and implementation. Module 8 will be about real-world evidence. So leveraging data sources beyond traditional clinical trials, often electronic health records, but also disease registries, increasingly patient-generated data from an app or perhaps a digital sensor. And the examples and principles that we'll talk about are how real-world evidence can be used to accelerate clinical development, but again, in keeping with the broad themes of a holistic view, how real-world evidence can also contribute to market access, commercial considerations, evidence strategies for your important stakeholders and customers in the real world. Module 9, we're going to talk about artificial intelligence. It's hard to escape artificial intelligence. We'll give you a brief historical overview, the development of this field. You've probably heard of the exciting work based on image recognition and image parsing. That belongs somewhat to perhaps the era of supervised learning in artificial intelligence. And then we'll move beyond that kind of image-based application to the exciting world of generative artificial intelligence, what you may have been experimenting with or working with in your company with ChatGPT or Gemini or any of a number of generative solutions. What can you do with these? Again, both for clinical development, for your routine work, and how can it create value and new value creation? And speaking of value, in Module 10, we're going to talk about pricing and its close companion value. Obviously, this is a time of great scrutiny of pricing and access, but there are new frameworks coming out on how you can assess the value of an innovative new therapy. Some of you may already know, in all likelihood, you're aware of the standard method, things like the cost in dollars or money per quality adjusted life year. But in this session, we're going to talk about broader concepts of value that can be connected with a financial model, right? And so as you look at pricing and whether or not a therapy is cost effective, this is an argument you must be prepared to make and defend for your therapies. We're going to take you inside the state of the arts and some emerging concepts of value that you can rely on and try to use to justify your pricing and your market strategies. Module 11, we're starting to look at cross-discipline teams. This is a recurring theme. We've already talked about the interactions between clinical development, medical affairs, commercial, et cetera. But, you know, this is an approach that is widely used in many other industries, even within the life sciences. It's widely used in the medical devices and diagnostics field, but broad consumer, packaged goods and all sorts of industries. And the idea is a product development framework. And as I talk about product development, the notion of starting with the customer's needs and working backwards, the notion of cross-disciplinary teams, of almost a design thinking approach to an ideation to meet a need, coming up with a concept, iteration to improve the concept as you pressure test it, you'll recognize the parallels to elements of perhaps the traditional drug development process and also newer efforts to be more innovative, to be more agile. And so we'll take a page from other industries and we'll explore this product development framework in hopes that it has insights for how you can function and thrive in cross-disciplinary teams. Module 12, we'll do a case study of a launch of an innovative new product that really was a scientific success story, but it underperformed expectations when it hit the market. And we'll examine why. We'll use this real-life case study, again, to consolidate this theme that we've talked about of working across disciplines, about having a holistic integrated approach between clinical development, regulatory, medical affairs, market access, et cetera. And we'll close with a module in which we explicitly turn the lens from these technical topics of clinical development and delivery to yourself. Understanding yourself, managing yourself, and developing your capabilities as a leader. And just one final note, across these 13 modules, you'll experience some content delivered via video. There are supplemental readings. There are interactive exercises. We use case studies whenever we can. So there will be a variety of learning opportunities. And we'll also have leadership lens activities and capstones interspersed through these modules so that you can make that transition in your mind from learning these broad industry-wide trends and strategic considerations and start to think about what that means for your development as a leader. Rudy, I think that's it for these couple slides. I'll turn it back over to you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. And we have first questions for you, Stanley. So Yolanda would like to become a clinical research associate or clinical research coordinator, and she's asking whether this course or certificate from this course would be helpful to transition to that field.
Yeah, so I think so, right? I think our general thesis is that wherever you sit in this really, really complicated process of clinical development, you will benefit from a broader perspective, a broader set of perspectives, a broader view of how your work, even if it seems specific and narrow, how it fits into the whole, both for clinical development, regulatory approval, but beyond. And I think you'll be better prepared to engage in a whole variety of conversations, whether it's with sites or with colleagues on your team or in different functions, thanks to the variety of perspectives that we share in the program.
Absolutely. So to summarize it again, what are the key program features? You see it in front of you on the slides, comprehensive curriculum. So as I said before, you have research to back up the insights, to back up the views of the faculty, conclusions, etc. So comprehensive curriculum developed by expert faculty. We will talk about them a little in a moment again. So Stanley will also give us a bit of an overview of his colleagues, and it's self-paced. So a lot of the lectures are recorded, but they're also live sessions. So you can do this, at the same time as when you're working, or if you are in between jobs, that's also good. But you can do this before work, after work, anytime you have a moment. The only thing I would recommend is not to procrastinate, because then, of course, you've seen it's 14 modules, so there'll be more and more in the coming weeks. And then, of course, as Stanley said, it's practical. So there'll be a project, or there'll be cases to work on, and this will not be a dry theoretical exercise, but it will be highly hands-on course as well. So we talked about case studies already and talked about hands-on. This is intertwined with the capstone, as I mentioned. And then the frameworks and the tools, this is, again, not very heavy in terms of theory and the dryness and the heavy books. Everything is delivered to you efficiently, so you can learn as quickly as possible what you need to know to improve your management of clinical trials. And of course, keep an eye on the economic viability of it. So a little bit more about Stanley again and his colleagues. So maybe if you spend a bit more time on your background and how you got to where you are today, and then also give us a bit of flavor of other people who will show up in the program, either in pre-recorded format or live sessions. Thank you.
Sure. So I'm trained as a general non-invasive cardiologist. I still continue to see patients at Brigham and Women's Hospital, which is one of the larger Harvard Medical School teaching affiliate hospitals. I worked for many years running my own lab, including projects in digital health, electronic health records analysis, the stool microbiome. And in the course of my research, I had a lot of industry collaborations and interactions. And that led me to gradually take on more and more responsibility. And then this title, which you see on your slide, leading executive education programs for companies in the life sciences sector, but these programs are based at Harvard Medical School. And you may say, well, gee, what does Harvard Medical School know about drug development? They don't develop drugs. And you'd be absolutely right, right? But what we have is a very broad faculty base, and we have the experience through our many years of doing executive education, of working with some of the top global biotech and pharmaceutical companies, bold-faced names that you've all heard of. And as part of those programs, these customized programs we've done for individual companies, we've had great access to the senior leaders and executives of these companies. And they tell us, this is what concerns us. These are our strategic focuses over the next few years. And therefore, this is what we want to upskill our team members in. And we've taken these insights from many years and many companies and tried to distill them into the program, into the learning approaches, the teaching cases, and the topics that we've presented in this program. Could you go on to the next slide, Rudy? So you can see on the next two slides, we have the names and affiliations of the teaching faculty. I won't go into all of them by name, but let me just summarize. And Rudy, perhaps you could go on to the next slide as well. So as you look, you'll recognize that some of the teaching faculty come from Harvard Medical School or its affiliated hospitals. So for instance, Justin Gaynor, who is a thoracic oncologist and an experienced clinical trialist, works with countless companies in medical oncology. But there are also, in fact, I think the plurality or most of the speakers are not from Harvard Medical School, but we are able to convene experts from patient advocacy groups, from biotech, from pharmaceutical companies, from technology companies. And so we are bringing the best experts who know about these topics and their application to biotech and pharmaceutical companies, including from some of your colleagues who work in the life sciences industry themselves. And so we are rooting everything we're teaching in the actual needs and challenges that biotech and pharmaceutical companies, and by extension, all of you are facing every day. Rudy, back to you.
Great stuff. And we have a couple of questions for you as well. Praveen's asking, I'm into clinical statistical programming function. How will this certificate program help me?
You know, I think I would give a similar answer to the question that was already raised, right? So when you think about biostatistics, it's obviously a critical function. It has application across the life cycle. In your day-to-day work, in some companies, people who are statistics experts, they may never meet a patient, right? And so they may say, well, gee, what do I need to know about patient centricity? Our argument would be that, again, you interact with people who work in many, many different functions. As you grow, right, if you hope to rise higher either within your specific function or perhaps in the future take on a role where you explicitly have to connect different functions. This understanding of the approaches taken by other parts of the company, other functions, of your customers, the needs and perspectives and evidence requirements for your customers, for the stakeholders in the healthcare ecosystem, which will shape adoption and the ultimate commercial success. These broader perspectives will help you in your career.
And here's another one, and maybe that's a bit challenging when it comes to acronyms, but hopefully that's clear to you, Stanley. CU is asking, I work in RWE under medical affairs, and I would like to know if this program could help me understand the application of RWE in CD and prepare me for supporting pre-launch early phase products.
Yeah, so it's a great question. So RWE is real world evidence, the kind of evidence partner to real world data. And if you're working in medical affairs, arguably, this is a very interesting emerging area. Some people would say, and it's not just me, it's not just some people, it's giants of the consulting world that work with all of your companies and your bosses. They would say that, medical affairs is positioned to have a larger strategic role as a connector, certainly with the customers, but also into clinical development. One of the points that we'll make with the case study and our discussions in general is that real world evidence for customers in the marketplace, those efforts really need to start earlier. They need to start very, very early in clinical development. So even in the narrow intersection of real world evidence and medical affairs, we think that there's a consensus emerging that these considerations should have influence and sway earlier in clinical development. I think real world evidence approaches in general, there's increasing momentum to think about real world evidence studies very, very early, soon after phase 1 or coincident with phase 1. And similarly, there's increasing focus on earlier involvement of medical affairs. Whatever that timeline is in your company, maybe it's 2 years before launch, moving that activity earlier. And so again, when you say real world evidence and medical affairs, both of those topics, both of those functions really are assuming, they're becoming a strategic asset, and they're having influence earlier in the clinical development process. And that's a theme that we'll talk about a fair amount in this program.
Wonderful. Another question for you, Stanley. So Shruti is asking, I'm in the medical devices side, and we partner with pharmaceutical companies, but don't necessarily run a trial ourselves. Is this value to me, or should I be exploring other courses?
It's a great question. So if you do work, the question I believe said that you do work with pharmaceutical companies. And so there are going to be a lot you'll learn about the perspectives, the challenges, the approaches taken by your partners in clinical development in biopharmaceutical companies. I will say that the module where we talk about product development, that, as I mentioned earlier, product development is probably more widely used as a framework in medical devices, although there are definitely pharmaceutical companies who use it. There are pharmaceutical executives who have product development in their titles. And also, I think from the broader perspective of, for instance, we have a module where we talk about disparities, right? Anytime you're introducing a new technology, that is going to be subject to the same disparities that exist in clinical practice. It may exacerbate it. So if you talk about certainly a new therapy, adoption of that therapy is going to be influenced by considerations of equity and disparities. If you now say, oh, we want a companion diagnostic for a therapy, that doubles or more than doubles the complexity and the susceptibility to disparities, and therefore the need to kind of take that assessment and see if you can intervene to mitigate that, again, to broaden access. So just like I talked about cross-silo leadership being benefited by having a curiosity about the approaches, the challenges of people who work in another function, I think you could apply a similar argument to your role, and maybe this program would help you better serve as a bridge between your company and your pharmaceutical partners.
Thank you. So a couple of questions where maybe I can answer, you can chime in, Stanley, if you want. Again, Himanshu's asking if this certificate can be considered as an advanced education to break into pharma. So we did say that it's useful for multiple career transitions, but it's not a degree program, right? So it's a certificate. So obviously, let's bear that in mind as well. Pilar is asking what are the opportunities to go live to the school and interact directly in person with professors from the course. It's an online course. It's not a blended course. So to be fair, it doesn't make a difference if you're close to Harvard or not. Everybody will have the same experience. But of course, there may be some public events on campus where you could participate perhaps. But in general, it's designed not as a blended course, but a fully online course, right, Stanley?
It's fully online. There are opportunities to interact live. There are 2 faculty-led sessions that are live, and there are extensive sessions led by your colleagues, Rudy, success coaches and moderators, things like that, as I understand.
Exactly. So Anna's asking, will this program have common ground with the GCSRT curriculum? Are there any enrollment limitations?
So that's an insider question. I believe GCSRT is another program run through Harvard Medical School. I would say it's complementary. Our focus really is on this holistic, cross-disciplinary, cross-function value creation in the life sciences industry. And so in emphasis, in illustrative case examples or case studies, in the topics chosen, I think it would be a nice complement.
Yes, so Anna says it's Global Clinical Scholar Research Training Program.
Yeah, I could be wrong. I think that's a little bit more about how to do clinical research. And so that's again, something that we won't talk that much about in this class. This is not about how to design a clinical trial. It's really about these strategic and landscape considerations, emerging technology across the industry. So they complement. There's probably not much overlap, if I had to guess.
Okay. So here we are on the final slide. You see 2 QR codes, which on my left, it says apply now, right? So you can apply to the program if you are clear that you want to do it. You can just scan this QR code and off you go. You will get through the registration process and you can get started. Or if you have questions, you can scan this QR code on my right side. Did I say it left before? I hope so. Now it's on my right side, so you can schedule a call with an advisor to learn more, right? So if you want to have a one-on-one discussion to talk about what you just heard, you can do so. It's very easy. You also see the link in the chat. You can just click on Calendly link, book the time, and spoke to a human, not a robot, to talk about the program and hopefully clarify any questions or concerns you might have so you can decide one way or another. So on my left side, you can apply already, or otherwise use scan this other QR code where you can schedule time to talk about this a bit more. So my colleagues also put this in the chat again, so you can just click on it. Hopefully that's clear and easy to do. All right. Pilar is asking, since this is not a degree program, does everyone who is everyone who applies accepted? It's an open enrollment program, right? So there are no prerequisites. Yes, you don't need to take an exam to take the course. And if you have any other questions, please put them in the Q&A. Ideally in English. We try to be multilingual, but sometimes our Spanish is a bit rusty. So if you tell us in English what you need, that would be good. Is the capstone program graded? Rocio, you can talk about it with your course facilitator or success coach, as we call them. You can talk about a bit of a detail, but in general, the principle is that if you follow the content and you put enough effort, grading is not going to be an issue, right? So you will need to put some effort, you need to do some work, but you know, it will be more pass-fail kind of logic or generous grading, but there won't be any grades like A, B, C, D, E, F. There won't be any distinction or anything like this. The focus here is on learning, not the competition with your peers. Riham will disqualify me to be a researcher. Stanley, what do you think?
I'm sorry, I don't think I understood the question. Oh,
so
qualify
will this course qualify you as a researcher?
Well, researcher is a very, very broad term. I think if you're talking about
medical research, it means, Riham.
Yeah, I mean, this again, so since this is, you know, an online certificate program, we don't talk explicitly about qualifications, right? We talk about learning objectives. So it depends on who your audience is and who you're trying to convince. Certainly, if you are hoping to do research of a variety of kinds in the biopharmaceutical industry, this will give you a whole host of very, very valuable perspectives. As a qualification, I think Rudy already made the point. This is not a degree, so it really depends on the context that you're thinking about.
And yeah, Riham added that he's focused on rare diseases and clinical trials related to them. So like in many of the courses like this, we are not industry agnostic. We already focus on healthcare. But within that, we might have cases and examples from various applications, various success stories or failures, various diseases. But I'm not sure there is a specialty focus on rare diseases. But Stanley, well, tell us more.
We do talk explicitly about some general trends in drug development for rare diseases. And it comes up, for instance, in the patient centricity module. It comes up in the real world evidence module. You know, rare disease is something that requires some nuance, but application of the same general principles. So patient centricity, it's a core fundamental mindset that benefits everybody. If you're working specifically in the rare disease population, then you know recruiting for a rare disease trial has additional complexity and nuance. But I do think that's an example where our discussion of patient centricity will be useful to you. Our discussion of real world evidence will be useful for you.
And CU is asking if there will be an opportunity to network with peers. Generally, yes. What we try to encourage is that you learn from one another. That's why you will have a course website dedicated only to you. And we'll use the technology to connect you with your peers. And I know it may sound like a cliche, but the more you put into this, the more you get out of it. And as we see already from your questions, there's plenty of experience to be shared across, right? So yes, there will be opportunities to network with peers. When it comes to the size of the cohort, we run it several times in a year, so that can vary. So any other final questions? Otherwise, please look at the QR codes in front of you or the link in the chat. You will get the recording as well if you register for this webinar, and you will get the slides also. So you can look at it again if you need to. But as I said, if you are ready to go, you can apply and register on my left side, or you can schedule a call with an advisor on the right side if you want to have a bit of a clarification discussion one-on-one. Then our team is waiting for you to take your questions and appointments. So happy to get any more questions if you need to clarify something. So, okay, so one last call for final questions. Stanley, you were crystal clear.
Great questions.
All right, wonderful. So we hope to see you in the program. As I said, once again, QR codes in front of you, link in the chat, or you get the video and the slides. And also this will be posted on YouTube, so you can watch it there if you want as well. Just follow Emeritus or Harvard Medical School, and you will find the video. So thank you so much, and have a great day.